Hi, I'm Wednesday. Welcome to my Twin Flame TV and Tarot channel. Today I want to talk to you about what the difference between polarized feminine energy and divine feminine energy is. I'm also going to be doing a video for the masculine covering the same topic because even though I've heard very different twin flame stories about how connections have played out in the 3D. I've observed in the course of my work that the dynamics of a twin flame connection often energetically follow a pattern and a certain playbook. So today, I want to get into that and explain how and why that is. And I hope that a lot of you will understand that what plays out in the physical between you and your twin flame is nothing more than a physical manifestation of yours and your twins' inner state. We are the only soul connection that's inverted. And this means, in layman's terms, that whatever is going on in our inner world, within ourselves and our connection, will manifest in the 3D, for better or worse. And because things play out in a certain way energetically, I'm hoping that by explaining to you how that works, that it will empower you to work with your own energy and take your connection to where you would like it to go. Right, so polarized feminine energy is basically the divine feminine in her lower ego self. We all have a constructed self. We're given this constructed self from childhood. The problem is that this constructed self has reached a lot of very false conclusions about life, love, men, women, beliefs, morals, and ourselves. So when the divine feminine is in her lower ego, i.e. polarized self, although she's a person that very early on in life has an interest in spirituality or religion, and she is somewhat protected from very powerful ego programming, she is still ego programmed nonetheless. And in an energy where she's at some point in her life, whether that be through a toxic parent, narcissistic abuse as a child, or childhood wounding, has reached the conclusion that the only way she is worthy of love, attention, and affection is if she overgives, overextends, and oversacrifices herself to the point where she loses herself and forgets who she is. She finds it very difficult in her polarized energy to tell people she cares about how she feels, especially if she has been wronged in some way. And she will often put up with a lot more than she ever should. She's often an empath that will help anyone, and she will give her energy, her time, her love, her attention, and be a very maternal, loving, caring figure in people's lives. But because She is overall in an energy of overgiving and overextending herself. These relationships in her life are often unhealthy, whether it be to her family, her friends, her relatives, or even romantic relationships. She will always be in an energy where she overgives, overloves, overthinks, overreacts at times. And you will observe as a feminine, if you look back on your life, that a lot of your karmic situations and relationships have all had at their core the lesson of you learning to love yourself. Some feminines recognize this earlier than others. And for my part, the relationships in my life, when I look back on them, have all taught me to love myself. Whether I've taken that lesson on board or not was always a different thing. And I think a lot of you feminines out there will resonate with this, because we've often in our lives put up with a lot more than we ever should have, for fear of not being accepted or loved or wanted if we learn to say no. When the polarized feminine meets her masculine, as I said, she's very early on aware that this connection is meaningful, that it's spiritual, and it has a great significance for her and her twin. But because she's in an energy of overgiving and overextending herself, and she is in her polarized energy, she will, even if she sees red flags or flaws in her twin, will often keep quiet about this for fear of losing this meaningful, rare connection. And because the masculine is in his polarized energy, and I will explain later what that means, this can lead to very unhealthy behavior patterns between both counterparts, because as well as the mirroring their best sides and their strengths to each other, they also mirror each other's weaknesses. And in some cases, this will lead to initially twin flame separation, and maybe even within that separation, a period of running and chasing. I've explained before that the divine feminine starts to pursue her divine masculine to convince him to accept the connection because he has nothing to fear. And the divine masculine, through being in his own polarized energy, is fearful of the intensity of the connection, because somewhere along in his life, he has reached the conclusion that having a deep, loving, meaningful commitment means a loss of freedom. Now, this can play out in the physical in a lot of different ways. And how it plays out, as I said, is very individual from twin flame pair to twin flame pair. Some divine masculines will separate, get with the karmic, run and chase, and keep choosing the karmic, which will ultimately lead to the divine feminine being ultimately going through what's called the ultimate discard through her divine masculine. Now, this is when the masculine abandons and disregards, blocks, ghosts, and totally dips off the face of the planet. And the feminine, because she's polarized, is left with another wound of abandonment, fear, confusion. She will observe, especially in the runner and chaser stage, that what is coming out of her masculine's mouth and what he is letting her feel from him are two different things, which leads to a very toxic state of confusion. Yeah. Feminines that are caught up in this often not only feel confused, they feel worthless, feel not good enough, feel that they've said something or done something, and they keep going over situations over and over again, trying to find an answer to what that could be. But then, as the feminine starts to spiral towards rock bottom, she will get there in the end with a thud, and then discover that the only way she can get herself out of that emotional mess that she's in is to examine why she's so hurt in the first place. And that is when the feminine starts to go within. She starts to go into the dark night of the soul. Often this can trigger or reanimate dormant psychic abilities. And when she gets to that rock bottom and she can feel the energy of her twin around her stronger than ever, and that feeling of loss becomes almost unbearable. That is, as I said, when she starts to go within and starts to examine why she's so distraught, hurt, and where her feelings of worthlessness and fear of abandonment stems from. And then that is when the divine feminine energy in the polarized feminine starts to rise. Hindus call this the Kundalini and depict it as a serpent that lives in the small of your back close to your tailbone. It's divine feminine energy that starts to rise within the feminine. She starts to discover her connection to Source and starts to heal her own wounds and become more and more in touch with who she truly is. She starts to speak her truth instead of keeping quiet to not rock the boat like she did before. She starts to follow her passions and her talents and starts to discover herself all over again. And as a result, becomes more self-aware and more empowered to heal herself. And as she is healing herself, she goes through what is called the divine feminine glow-up. She starts to discover her purpose, what her mission as a twin flame on this earth is. And she starts to discover who she truly is, with all of her strengths, weaknesses, shadow and light. And she starts to embrace herself and fall in love with life and herself, piece by piece. And this starts to show. Divine feminines going through this, even their skin starts to glow. They start to emit a presence of power and sovereignty. It's when a queen becomes an empress. And the people around her, including her divine masculine, can see and feel this. And when that happens, when the polarized feminine steps into her goddess power and starts to let her feminine energy rise and shine its light into the world, that is when, as a feminine, you will discover that your connection to your twin flame in the 5D becomes more intense, and you will observe that your divine masculine is awakening. Now, as a feminine, you will start to feel an inner peace, and you will feel more love for your twin flame than you ever have before. No matter what has happened in the 3D, you are able to let bygones be bygones, because you understand that as well as you weren't in your true self, they weren't either. So what they were saying or doing to you in their lower selves has nothing to do with who they truly are or who you are as a soul and as a person. You will start to see in your everyday life that there are synchronicities, symbols and signs guiding you along your path. And if you open your heart and your soul to what the divine is telling you, you will ultimately feel very at peace with the notion of trusting that the divine has set you and your counterpart on this sacred journey for a reason, and that the universe nor our divine creator ever leave anything they have started in unfull-ended imperfection. That doesn't happen. And you will learn to surrender to what the divine wants from you. You will learn to discern when spirit requires you to take action and when it requires you to be in an energy of reciprocity. Yeah. And, and in an energy of receiving. You will learn how to work with your own energy, control your thought processes and uplift your path. You will learn to follow your passions and in that find your purpose. And when that has happened, that is when your heart chakra starts to activate. You will feel this because even happy thoughts will touch your soul to the point of happy tears. You'll become more emotional in every way. You will start to purge even more negative emotions and belief systems that are surfacing because you're very aware that they're only energy and only need clearing. You will start to see in your experiences the lessons that are being brought to your attention, and you will learn to see your life and your journey from a higher perspective. And that is when you know that you yourself are reaching a state of inner completion and wholeness, that you're learning to balance your feminine and masculine energy. And that is when union takes place. That is when inner union takes place, and that activates 5D union, and 5D union will eventually manifest into the physical. So, my dear feminines, keep working on yourself, keep clearing your energy and seeing the lessons that are being brought to you so you don't have to live through the karma. Yeah, because that's what happens when repetitive things come up and you recognize that there is a lesson that is being brought to your attention and you're open to the learning experience itself. It prevents you from having to live through the experience in order for you to live that lesson and learn it and internalize it. So, my dear feminines and my dear masculines watching, please, my masculines, cross-watch. Yeah, feminines also take a look at the video about polarized masculine and divine masculine energy. It will help you understand a lot of things that may have played out in the physical in the course of your journey. And it might help you to let bygones be bygones. Because don't forget, you are not the person you were when you started your journey. And when your masculine comes back to you at some point in your life, you will see that they are not that person anymore either. So, my dear feminines, I'm going to say goodbye for now. And I hope you'll join me again very soon. Bye-bye.